I was sipping coffee one morning by my dock when a cop car pulled up, followed by a woman I recognized. She was yelling about my old lakeside cabin, claiming it was dragging down the value of her fancy neighborhood. The audacity! She had no clue that I was the one with all the permits for the docks, not her upscale community. As she ranted about my family's 75-year-old cabin, I quietly sipped my coffee. I'd already handed her $2,500 in fake fines before, assuming she could just bully me. But this wasn't just some random shack. It was a legal piece of property. Her HOA, which she ran, had been collecting fees illegally for decades. Today, I was planning on ending that. Let me take you back a bit and explain how all this started. My name's Max Callahan, and I'm 52. For the past few years, I've been living a quiet life after a rough divorce, just trying to keep busy and put the pieces back together. About 8 months ago, I inherited my grandfather's old fishing cabin on Lake Serenity. Now, don't get confused. This wasn't some shiny lakefront mansion. It was a simple 1940s-era wooden shack built with my grandfather's own hands when he returned from the war. The air smelled like cedar and nostalgia. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, just wanted to restore the cabin over the weekends, maybe teach my grandson how to fish and relive some good memories. That was when I met a woman named Sarah Gray. Sarah, 48, drove a shiny white SUV, always spotless, and as it turned out, she was the president of an upscale HOA that had sprouted around the lake back in the 90s. This neighborhood was full of mansions, and Sarah, with her real estate background and banker husband, was all about keeping things pristine. She had that "I'm sweet until you cross me" smile that was always ready to show its true colors. The first time I encountered Sarah, I was out on the dock, sanding down the worn boards. The sun was just rising over the lake, and I felt a sense of calm like nothing else. Then, I heard the sound of her high heels tapping on the planks. She greeted me with an overly cheery "Welcome to the neighborhood," but her eyes were scanning for everything wrong with my cabin. I tried to stay polite and said, "Morning. It's a beautiful day, huh?" She replied, "Oh, yes, lovely," before shifting gears and saying, "I'm Sarah Gray, HOA president. I need to talk to you about getting your property up to our community standards." I could already tell she was sizing me up. There was no mistaking the way she said property, almost as though she were disgusted by it. I calmly handed her the original building permit from 1947, which I had started carrying around because of the whispers from the neighbors. "The cabin was built before your fancy HOA existed. Everything's legal, and it's grandfathered in," I explained. That was when her mask slipped a little, and she said, "That shack doesn't belong here anymore. It's bringing down everyone's property values." I took a deep breath, staying calm. "Ma'am, this cabin has been here long before your rules were ever made. It's not changing." I caught a whiff of her expensive perfume as she moved closer. She didn't take it well. "You have two choices," she said. "Either bring it up to our standards or we'll figure out how to get rid of it. We can't have this dragging down property values." But she didn't know who she was dealing with. My grandfather wasn't some naive man. He kept every document, every permit, and every receipt from his entire life. And he passed that obsession with order on to me. So, I calmly responded, "I think you're about to learn something interesting about this old place." 3 days later, I got a surprise visit from the county inspector. I was putting up some new cleats on the dock when he arrived, frowning like he already knew what he was going to find. He handed me a complaint signed by Sarah, accusing me of violating setback rules and making unpermitted modifications that could endanger the community. As he walked around, taking photos, I couldn't help but notice he was only interested in the exterior of the cabin, not the solid foundation or the careful restoration work I had been doing. That's when I decided to pull out Grandpa's old filing box. I took out the original survey maps, the 1947 building permit, and correspondence between Grandpa and the county when he built the place. Everything was organized and official. The inspector's attitude shifted right away. "Your paperwork's actually better than most new construction I see," he admitted. I smirked and added, "Well, while you're here, why not measure the setbacks on some of the newer properties around here? You might find a few violations." Sure enough, Sarah's deck, the one she often used for her little gossip sessions, had extended 3 feet beyond its boundary line, over what was technically easement property. That went straight onto her violation list. Not only had Sarah been illegally collecting dock fees, but her own property was in violation of the rules. I wasn't about to let that go unnoticed. From that point on, things escalated. Sarah began a smear campaign, painting my cabin as a blight on the community. She even started a Facebook group dedicated to protecting the neighborhood. But I kept my head down and focused on gathering more evidence, uncovering more documents from Grandpa's old files, and watching the community start to divide. While some neighbors were hesitant to stand up, the ones who had lived here for a long time remembered when the lake had been about peaceful fishing, not overpriced mansions. One day, while I was working on the cabin, I discovered something in Grandpa's old crawl space that changed everything. The original contract from 1994 with the Clearwater Development Corporation. It contained a clause that gave my family control over all the lake's docks and water access rights. My grandfather had legally retained ownership of the docks, even though he sold most of the land to the developers. That meant every dock permit, every slip rental, every fee Sarah had been collecting for decades. It all needed my approval. Armed with this information, I contacted Sarah's lawyer. I slid the original deed across his desk, watching his expression change as he realized the gravity of the situation. He advised me to let Sarah know before things got worse. I decided to play it smart, waiting until the community meeting to drop the bombshell. The meeting itself was a spectacle. Sarah came in confident, prepared to take me down. She had all her charts and photos, ready to make her case. But when it was my turn, I stepped up, holding the document that would change everything. This, I said, placing the contract on the podium, is the original development agreement. It states that the Morrison family retains approval rights for all dock structures and water access permits. That includes every dock in this community. Sarah's face went pale. The room fell silent. I went on to explain how every dock permit Sarah had been collecting fees for had been invalid for the past 30 years. Sarah exploded, calling the documents fake and accusing me of fraud. But when the county commissioner examined the contract, he confirmed its authenticity. Sarah's world started to crumble right there. I didn't want to hurt anyone, just find peace. So I offered a solution, permanent dock rights for the community in exchange for an end to the harassment and Sarah's resignation. The community supported me, and Sarah's meltdown made headlines. By the end of the week, Sarah resigned from the HOA, and the illegal dock fees she'd collected went into a lake conservation fund. The community organized the first Grandfather Morrison Lake Cleanup Day, restoring the shoreline and raising funds for a veterans program, something my grandfather would have been proud of. Sarah faced the consequences. She was fined for attempting to bribe an inspector, had to pay my legal fees, and lost the support of her neighbors. Months later, her house was sold, and her family moved away. The real victory wasn't just legal. It was about honoring my grandfather's legacy and standing up for what was right. Sometimes, standing your ground can change everything.